Nathan Murphy, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads.
You were in the maelstrom last night trying to process in real time.
Oh, God, it was hard to process in real time what exactly had happened. I came home and tried to watch back some of it to go through the 2 goals and see where the breakdown came, because it came from absolutely nowhere. Armenia showed no ambition at all. They were a team in crisis, understandably considering their run of form, and it looked as though they'd be happy with 2-0. And then they showed that they wanted to go on the attack and that they had the quality to open Ireland up. How they were so easy to get through. It felt as though Ireland had maybe just lost the run of themselves. Stephen Kenny said last night that he felt the overlap in centre-backs at 2-0. Do you need to be doing that? It felt right at the time. Are we going to stop Nathan Collins flying forward up the pitch, bombing forward? Maybe the cover just wasn't there. And then the second goal, Conor Hourhan makes a shocking mistake. I think Gavin Bazunu could have done better on both goals. But I'm not surprised by what Shane's saying as to what the reaction was after the second goal. You're 2-0 up against Armenia and it goes back to 2-2. Nobody is going to be satisfied with that. Nobody is going to say, well, give them more time. You're in the middle of a match. Emotions are high, understandably. People are going to be incredibly frustrated. And yeah, this debate, I think you're right. Everybody's views are going to be a little bit more entrenched as to what they feel about Stephen Kenny. And a comfortable win last night, and he can probably relax a little bit over the Christmas. But now a lot of pressure is not just on that draw, but also the way the fixtures roll out for next year and the qualifiers, because in March he's going to need results, and understandably so, and rightly so. An Irish manager should be qualifying.
Are we strong in March? Are we traditionally always strong in March? Is that a thing?
Will players be playing football? Will Matt Doherty have gone out on loan? We have a backup for Josh Cullen, whose reputation was probably enhanced somewhat again last night, that there is no natural replacement, while Conor Coventry is sitting on the bench at West Ham and not getting any football. So for 70 minutes, it was fine. It was grand. The midfield is definitely an issue. We don't have that player still who can unlock a defence, and we don't have a striker who's going to score a lot of goals. So that is going to be something that constantly hampers the progress of this side. But I thought they played quite a bit of nice football. They were totally comfortable in possession, totally dominated the game. But yet again, big moments in matches are undermining any of the progress that Stephen Kenny is making. And you look at the last 4 games, Scotland twice, Ukraine and Armenia, and 7 points is not a bad return. They've played pretty well in almost all of those games, but it should have been a hell of a lot better. And that may well be Stephen Kenny's legacy, that what might have been, what could have been, and he's helped the team progress, but they're not getting the big results when they need them.
Yeah.
I know they got the victory last night, but again, this should have been an easy conversation post-game at 2 or 3-0, and instead we're looking at, and I think questions should be asked as to what happened, as to the substitutions that were made. Have they lost the run of themselves because they have a manager who hasn't instilled the necessary discipline in them when they're 2-0 up to be patient?
It was confusion leaving the stadium, because a lot of Irish fans, myself included, were like, what? I didn't know how I felt. I think a lot of people had to go for a pint after the match to process what had just happened, and it was a case of, well, I mean,
you're in your 20s. You don't need to justify a pint, Shane. It's fine. It's okay.
It was an excuse. It was an excuse. But it was one of those things you're kind of left well, that was better than a 0-0 or a drab 1-0 4 or 5 years ago. I actually weirdly enjoy that experience.
That's what I was saying to you.
You should listen to.
That's what I was saying to you.
Listen to Stewie Byrne, the roller coaster, and how it feels alive.
The last 2 games, 2-1 and 3-2. Yeah. I mean, if you look at it from an entertainment perspective,
well, we sorry, you're going to get hammered for saying that we're looking at this for entertainment. The one thing, the caveat to all this, right? And myself and Shane were having the conversation about the press conferences and how it is important. And I'm saying actually it's not that important. It is important in the context of the Nations League. And he was asked about it on Virgin last night as well. About you did say this was a winnable group. And we have finished where the seeding said we would finish, as opposed to outperforming the seeding. That's if he hadn't said any of that, he'd now be able to point to, well, it's the best we've ever done in a Nations League. We would have got relegated from this before, except they changed the rules. But he can't do that now. That's the one bit where managing the message is actually important, in that you set expectations and you either over-deliver or you under-deliver. And we have under-delivered versus we're going to win the group, which, was kind of an unnecessary thing to say at the start.
But the hyperbole is killing him in lots of ways because it provokes a reaction. So last night he would be well within his rights to come in that press conference afterwards and say, geez, we nearly blew it. Like, you know, just puff out the cheeks and say, can't understand what happened, made some inexplicable errors out there. You know, we can't do something like that again. Almost did all our good work. But instead it was over the top in the praise of the quality of the performance. And like, is that the inexperience? Is that the intense pressure he was on from the start, where he's had a feeling that every opportunity he has in front of the public, he has to react and go over the top because he knows the criticism is going to be so intense and insane on the other side.
Yeah.
So we have this constant battle, whereas he's clearly protecting his players. He clearly feels, you know, I'm not going to be publicly critical of this group of players. Whereas last night, like, it's a free hit. Like, Conor Hourihane, I couldn't have any issues if his manager comes out and says,
I know,
like,
but he's going to need
one of my most experienced players.
He's going to need Conor Hourihane at some point.
What's Conor Hourihane? Like, Conor Hourihane's not. Is he going to throw his toys out the pram when they get back to the team hotel? What were you doing having a pub at me for?
No, but his confidence might dip to a point where he's useless to you.
Well, he could have phrased it.
That can't happen.
He could have phrased it. Well, Conor knows himself that was a bad error. Do you know, he could have left it like, Conor doesn't need me to tell him that was a terrible mistake. But like, Kenny, like, you can see the cogs in Stephen's mind when he's up on the big screen with a few minutes left and it's 2-2 before the penalty is awarded, and you're thinking,
well, there was reporting that was the end of his job. If Armenia got a winner there, that was the end of his job, according to some of the reports. No, I didn't see them verified anywhere. I didn't see anybody on the record with that, or anybody even off the record with that. So
no, and things will change quickly as well. I think that there's no suggestion that anyone involved in the board feels it's time to change manager or has a desire to change manager. But if you're 2-0 up against Armenia with 20 minutes to go and you were to end up losing 3-2,
not a good look.
Martin O'Neill, Giovanni Trapattoni. But you're right, like, the entertainment is important. Like, people are enjoying these matches, and entertainment won't be enough though when it comes to the qualifiers. But maybe they can get both by then. Like, they did win the game last night. We were hammered on Monday because it's all about results, lads. Last night they actually did manage to win the game. Now it's all about performance. Like, they need to somehow combine the two at the same time. And listen, these games have never been easy. I, in preparation for commentary yesterday, was looking back on a decade ago, Ireland, Armenia. The only other time Armenia have come to town, it was a playoff of sorts as well. It wasn't a relegation playoff. Ireland needed to win this game to earn a playoff for Euro 2012 at home. Usual star-studded Ireland team of the time with Shea Given in goal and Richard Dunn at centre-half. Unfortunately, an injured Robbie Keane, but plenty of quality players in there, including Damien Duff. What happens? The Armenian keeper gets sent off after about 10 minutes. They scored the most ridiculous own goal you have ever seen. Richard Dunn puts Ireland 2-0 up in the hour. We've got one of the most successful, one of the most experienced managers of all time, and a great Irish side with loads of talent. Surely they have the experience. Surely that manager knows how to see this game through. What happens? 2 minutes later, Armenia score. And next thing they're attacking, down to 10 men with nothing to play for, away from home against this really strong Irish side. Like, these things do happen in international games. Like, nothing, it was the exact same scenario where you thought this game had to be done, but it wasn't. But like, Trapattoni himself would admit he was a lucky general. Stephen Kenny, because of these moments going against him again and again and again, he needs to put a stop to that.
Yeah, and maybe this is it. Maybe, you know, and I so in that context, I can see he's going to the change room going, well, we were pretty awful there, but we got lucky at the end. So maybe our luck has turned. And instead of like lacing into the players, because they all know, like, you don't need to shout at somebody to tell them they've done bad. Like, that just doesn't work as a...
Yeah, it doesn't. Look, Nathan, you mentioned two previous managers there and a previous era. You've been covering Ireland for a long time. Where does Stephen Kenny's football rate in terms of entertainment value, in terms of progressive football for you? Just for you, as a journalist and as a man?
I think the consistency of the last 4 games is something we haven't seen in a very long time. Quality of football is a dangerous term because we have to remember the players that we're dealing with here right now. It's not top quality Premier League standard. It's not Nations League A standard of football. But in terms of trying to do the right thing, the pace of the games, like, that's the biggest difference right now, is the pace of the games. That generally when Ireland are playing well, as they did in the first 50 minutes and for a good chunk of the second half, like, there's an intensity. They're trying to get it forward quickly. Say Jeff Hendrick's trying to do the right thing. So I think there has been a noticeable change in the way Ireland play football and approach these games. There is a question mark about the quality at times. Like, Hendrick didn't do enough last night. Jason Knight didn't do enough in an attacking sense last night. Parrott wasn't really in the game at all. Like, the quality of some of the goals, even the individual goals that they've scored, has been exceptional. So I don't think anyone can watch the last 4 matches and say that Ireland aren't playing a better brand of football. But now is the time, heading into Euro 2024, where they have to back it up with results.
Yeah,
I think Stephen Kenny understands that.
Let's hear.
I'm sure he must understand that.
Yeah, well, it's been rammed down his throat every time he opens the papers. So let's hear from some of the players. Is Obafemi, Brady, and O'Shea talking about Nathan in the post match? Have a look.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I feel like we was completely stunned. It was come out of nowhere. We was completely on them the whole game. But I mean, obviously, I feel like it was just a lack of concentration. Started from me, a few sloppy touches, but just like I said, thankful to Robbie for bringing them the 3 points.
There's a lot of young players in this squad. 7 under 23 started again tonight. Can you expand on that lack of concentration? Is it experience? Is it being 2-0 up at home, cruising, sort of losing the run of yourselves even a little bit?
I mean, yeah, like you said, we've got 7 under 23. Like we're still a young team. Not a lot of experience, but I mean, a couple of the boys have played a lot of games for sure. But I feel like sometimes these things happen. But I feel like the boys, we bounced back. Like I said, thankful to Robbie, and that he could put away the penalty. So yeah.
Obafemi's undroppable now. He's our number one. He's our leader. He's our hope. Let's put everything on his shoulders so that when he eventually lets us down, we can blame him.
Yeah, like there's not many Irish players already who have the quality of goals that Michael Obafemi has. It was just a brilliant finish, and the confidence that he spun away,
it was
knowing
great.
exactly what he was going to do.
Well, so as I was saying, I maybe missed up. I was like, we were behind the goals for it, and you could see like all he has to do here is hit it. If he can just do the thing that you know that he can do, it's going to be a goal. And lo and behold, he did the thing, which, like, you know, in a lifetime of watching sport, frequently you get let down by people.
Happen?
Well, like Dara O'Shea's had a free header from a corner about 5-6 minutes later, and it was a really good opportunity. You know, maybe I'm asking too much for that to hit the target again, but that was a free header. Like, anyway, sorry, to go back to Obafemi. If you're his club manager, you're putting him back in the team and you're riding that wave until he gets his move, wherever he gets the move to. And I think he's going to be a success. Like, whatever the issues were that were holding him back and have held him back at a couple of clubs now, you hope that he just begins to iron those out and play some football.
Yeah, he needs to get whatever's going on with his agent and managers sorted. I asked him at the end about just that this guy that we see for Ireland doesn't seem to be reflected in the media over in England, that, you know, he's basically seen as a troublemaker. You know, understandably denied such a thing, but he needs to play a lot of football and also needs to stay fit. Like, again last night, was it a bit of cramp? Was it a bit of a niggle? You remember against Scotland, he came off, he was injured, he couldn't play against Ukraine. To be able to rely on him to make sure that he is fit for these double headers and he's able to play the full 90 minutes of both games is going to be important. And himself and Troy Parrott didn't link up particularly well, but he has a dynamism I think that even Parrott doesn't have, and that we probably haven't seen in an Irish striker in quite a while. So, you know, Obafemi was one of the positives of last night. Like, again, I haven't heard too many people explain, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot from the pundits over the next while. You know, Gary Breen probably did it best at the weekend of explaining actually tactically what's going on, because it's all the bigger picture stuff, and we're as guilty as anyone of the bigger picture stuff. But in terms of team selection, like, was there anything he did wrong? I hear a lot of, Jeff Hendrick shouldn't have played. Jeff Hendrick's a good player. Mm-hmm. Jeff Hendrick's a very experienced player. He should be better than he was last night. He's also playing first-team football as well. But if it wasn't Jeff Hendrick, who are you putting in? Who is the guy that's been left out? Should it have been Alan Brown? Should it have been Conor Hourhan? Like, there were calls for a bit more experience in the side. Like, the two guys who have let Stephen Kenny down, shall we say, in the last 2 games were 2 of his experienced players. It was Alan Brown inexplicably handling the ball, something you would never expect him to do. And then Conor Hourhan, who's as solid as they come. You know, the criticism of Conor Hourhan at times is that he takes it too easy. He plays it too simple. Comes on, you know, he's 31 years of age, and it's just a complete meltdown as to what happens there. So the younger players, by and large, are delivering, but they're not quite, some of them, at the absolute level that Ireland need to go and totally dominate games and cut open sides.
Like, complacency was a word used a lot last night after the game, and like, do we just not know how to play against teams that we should be beating? Like, as in finishing them off. Like, it's all well and good playing against the Portugals, the Serbias and Scotland and getting up for those games, but why can't we just stand on the neck of these teams?
We don't have belief for 90 minutes to play football that way. We can do it in chunks. We did it for about 2/3 of the match last night. But they run out of steam creatively and mentally. I don't think they can keep going with it.
Because people don't believe. We can use the argument all we want. Oh, these are Championship footballers or League One footballers. But regardless of whether they're Championship footballers, they're still playing at a far higher level than the majority of the Armenian players.
Well, I saw an interesting point put forward yesterday that are these players at club level used to playing that style of football ever, where they're the ones, as they were last night, with all the possession.
Well, Derby are.
In dominant teams.
Like Derby are dominating their possession-based team in League 2 or whatever.
In League 2
League
now,
1,
but
whatever.
Jason Nice played one game in that Derby team in midfield. He's played the rest of his games at right back, so he's not having to make those sort of passes all of the time. And look, it's Armenia. They sat right back. They're as defensive a team as we've seen come to the Aviva. As you said, they had showed no ambition. You're 2-0 up without them having a sniff. Bazunu had nothing to do. They've got their couple of goals. I think Ireland, if they hadn't had those moments of madness, they probably get a third, maybe a sneaky fourth, and then it's a run-of-the-mill, straightforward victory, and everybody leaves quite happy.
All right, let's talk a bit about Robbie Brady, who came in for James McLean. Have a watch of this.
Well, Robbie, I don't think you'll ever maybe top the goal in Lille, but that one felt bloody important tonight.
Yeah, it felt good. It was an important goal for me, obviously. I've been a tough road over the last 18 months to 2 years on and off the pitch. So there was a lot of emotion after that one there tonight, but like I said, a stroke of luck getting the penalty at the end after a few minutes of madness. We nearly shot ourselves in the foot, but I'm delighted to get the win.
Can you explain what happened? 2-0 up, cruising, and as you say, 2 minutes of madness. You're a very experienced player. How does that happen?
I think when we dominating the ball for so long during the game, maybe we got a little bit greedy and chasing more goals, and we need to look at the bigger picture. We were 2-0 up, and we needed to make sure that we were more secure behind the ball in transitions, and we weren't, and we got punished for that with 2 almost identical goals. So we'll tweak that and make sure that it doesn't happen again. But like I said, we got a stroke of luck and we won the game. So
what are the last 20 minutes like then as that's just happened, and you know the importance of, well, definitely not losing the game, but trying to go and get that winner? Yeah, we knew we would dominate. We're dominating. They got a bit of a lift from a couple of goals, but if we moved the ball the way we were throughout the game, I was confident enough that a chance would come. It's just about whether it goes away, and we managed to get a stroke of luck with the penalty and put it away. I don't think Stephen Kenny's ever lost faith in you. He name-checked you a lot when you were out injured. To get the start tonight and to have that moment at the end, considering all you've been through, can you describe what it means to you, probably to your family, to your friends, to everybody, to be out there having a moment like that again? Yeah, it means the world to me to be back in and wearing an orange jersey again. Obviously, when you're out injured, I'm not sure if you can get yourself back in a place there, but I managed to get myself back in a place now where I'm feeling good and strong, and I feel like I've got a lot to offer, but I've got to put in the hard work now and at club level to make sure I stay involved and see how we go now going forward. Yeah, was it a 50-50 decision? If dropping James McLean must not have been easy for Stephen Kenny, because he's playing his best football for Ireland at the moment. So what was behind that, and how well did he do?
He loves Robbie Brady. He has always spoken about Robbie Brady in glowing terms. And maybe the fact that Ireland were going to have a bit more possession, there wouldn't be the opportunities on the counter-attack that James McLean could expose. And McLean was really good on Saturday night and thinking those little balls behind the Scottish fullbacks. That Brady, is it fair to say, is a bit more cultured and a bit more control. And he probably had more touches than anybody, it felt like, maybe with the exception of Jason Malumbi last night. He got involved in everything, and he had a good game. He obviously set up the first goal from the set piece. There were a couple of other decent deliveries into the area, and you are reliant on your full-backs for a lot of creativity. Ireland's best stuff generally came down the wings when Doherty had the beating of his full-back. Brady didn't seem to quite have the beating of his full-back as easily as Doherty did, and I thought he had a very good all-round game. And if he can keep himself fully fit, he'll probably get a lot of game time over the next little while.
Which players for you, Nathan, have come out of these 2 games with their reputations enhanced?
I think Nathan Collins has shown again that he is very, very comfortable at this level. Darragh O'Shea did little or nothing wrong over the 2 games, and it does look as though that full transformation that started after the home defeat to Ukraine is nearing completion. Shane Duffy, Seamus Coleman have been dropped out of this team, barely featured over the 2 matches. So I think the two of them certainly enhanced the reputation. But Jason Malumbi was really good for everything except, and maybe that's the entire every conversation is for everything except that bit. Like, it was madness. And like, Stephen Kenny should have gone through Jason Malumbi after the game, because he's put a lot of trust in him in there. And there's a reason he's probably not starting in that position on a regular basis, is that he just seems to lack that bit of composure. He should have been sent off. So Malumbi on the ball, it was actually far better than I expected him to be in that role for Josh Cullen. But he's just too ill-disciplined. And you can't have a player like that in that position. Obafemi, obviously, I think is an automatic selection after his couple of performances. Matt Doherty, I thought, made one big mistake the first night, but generally played very well. Robbie Brady back in the fold. So are there players who did themselves massive damage? Potentially Troy Parrott, but he stuck with Troy Parrott all the way last night. And aside from that, I don't see a huge amount of calls and for players who have been left out to come in. Like, what are the changes? Maybe Alan Brown can consider himself really unlucky, considering how well he played at right wing back, not to get a spot. Obviously, the few minutes he did play didn't go particularly well for him. But the Scott Hogan calls probably would have come through. I can guarantee you we would have had a Scott Hogan. He should have played the foreign player. Gets that one unbelievable opportunity to score a first international goal and doesn't take it. So team selection wise, I think it's okay. Do you need three centre backs at home?
Ogbenya was the name that a lot of people were kind of mentioning last night, certainly within the stadium. But is that a case of the way Armenia play? There's not much space in behind. That was a tactical thing, I wonder, Nathan.
You'd have to assume so. Ogbenya is the foreign man and played really well when he came on in Glasgow on Friday night. The only reason why you wouldn't bring him on is that Armenia are sitting back, that you can't use his pace in any way, and you didn't think he'd be able to make much of an impact. Listen, maybe there was a plan to do something before the 2 goals went in and they had to rethink it. And actually, maybe when the 2 goals went in, it would have suited them because the game became a bit more open. But in terms of, the team right now feels somewhat set in stone. You'd hope that Conor Coventry goes out on loan in January and gets a run of games and can get himself in the squad, that Will Smallbone gets in the squad and they can add 2-3 players from that 21s to bulk it up. But selection-wise, there doesn't seem to be a huge amount wrong with what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Will we hear from Darragh Shea? One more last player interview. Have a listen to this.
A difficult one for a player to answer, but there's a lot of question marks about Stephen, a lot of criticism about Stephen heading towards Euro 2024. What's your sense as a player as to where this group is going under Stephen Kenny?
I think this group is going the right way, and I think if you look at our games and look at the way we've transitioned and played and the type of football we're playing, it's exciting. You look at the age of the squad, the players who are playing, and we've got players here who play for the next 10 years, which is massive for a country. Do you know what I mean? So the more experience we can get, the more games we can get under our belt, and playing our style of football is only going to progress and help us. And obviously leading into a campaign, we've kind of had a good bunch of games now to prepare ourselves, and lots of lads are getting used to international football, which is great. But I think this team is going the right way in training. The backroom staff, even around the hotel, everyone's been amazing, and it's a real positive moment. It's great. Everyone buzzes off coming in and playing for their country because of the atmosphere the gaffer sets and everyone around them. So yeah, it's a credit to him. And obviously, like I said, the more games we play, the better we'll get, and we just need to learn from our mistakes and push on.
Yeah, look, we were well stocked with centre backs. It will be interesting to see if we can play with 2 centre backs, just to see what that looks like. You can't really experiment between now and the end of the Euros unless we're out, at which point it won't be Stephen Kenny experimenting, more than likely. Let's hear from the fans. Aisling was out. Aisling O'Reilly was out with the fans. Have in the aftermath. Have a look.
Thought it was okay up until they got a bit complacent, didn't they?
Yeah.
They got a bit complacent.
Too many mistakes, too quick follow, I'd say. They were a bit off the ball, you could actually say, for a while there.
What about Stephen Kenny? Is he the man for the job? Should he stay on?
Kenny in, all the way.
The biggest mistake Ireland ever made was getting rid of Mick McCarthy.
Yeah, it was a good match, to be fair. I thought Armenia were a bit unlucky to get 2 players sent off. But, it's a great result for Ireland anyway.
So they were unlucky to get them sent off?
Well, obviously it's dissent, so it's deserved. But at the same time, you got to listen to the ref, haven't you?
70 minutes gone and everything just seemed to fall apart for Ireland.
Absolutely fell apart. You can feel the crowd turn. Everyone was booing. It was horrible, to be honest with you. I actually thought for 1 minute Armenia might come back and even do an England against Germany, but didn't happen.
And do you think that Stephen Kenny is the man for the job here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I couldn't pick anybody else for the job at the moment anyway.
And were you impressed with Ireland up until, I suppose, that 70th minute?
Yes and no. I mean, possession, a lot of possession, but possession doesn't count for anything unless you put the ball in the net. So they did okay first half, but they were a bit flat to begin in the second half. So
Mick McCarthy Mark III. That's the alternative, is it? I keep. Damien Delaney was like, well, it's not just Big Sam. There are other people out there who can do it on Virgin last night. It's just I don't know what the list is of the alternatives. I don't know who's on that list.
If it wasn't Stephen Kenny, and people go back to the debate about who should be the man to replace Martin O'Neill, and it felt like the public sentiment that got to John Delaney that there was a sense that they wanted something different, and he sort of came up with this hodgepodge of McCarthy and Kenny. If it wasn't Stephen Kenny, Mick McCarthy would still be the manager right now. Like, that is the obvious scenario we would be in. And how many of these young players would have developed? Would be in a better situation? I honestly do believe that, and I know people say that Stephen Kenny is the worst record of Ireland manager, that whoever was in charge right now would in all likelihood have that, because there was a rebuild desperately needed. And these sort of, remember they did win the game last night, but these sort of debates have been coming ever since Euro 2016, because there's been a massive decline in results. Think back to Mick McCarthy's last campaign in charge and the lack of quality in both games against Gibraltar. Remember the home game against Gibraltar? It was an own goal, and Robbie Brady scored at the last kick of the game for a 2-0 win. And it was brutal.
I don't remember that game at all, I have to say. I've blanked that whole period from my memory.
Impressed.
The away game was unfortunately a harbinger of that whole era and what it was going to be like. And look,
the confusion with me is I came home last night after the match, and you're catching up on some of the post-match reaction, and so I went from watching Damien Delaney talking about 3 wins in 20 competitive games, this isn't good enough, are we confident going into next March's games? No. And then I'm watching Nathan's full chat with Darragh O'Shea, where he's like, there's players in this team that can play for 10 years, which is massive for a country. So you go from being completely negative to, okay, yeah, Darragh O'Shea's actually made a good point there, and he's in the dressing room, he's full of positivity. So I think it's okay to feel a little bit of both, isn't it? Like Darragh O'Shea, Nathan, you probably walked away from that interview with Darragh last night and you probably felt a little bit better about the whole thing.
Yeah, well, it did feel as though he was taking responsibility as to what had happened. He wasn't coming out saying that this was an outstanding performance. He seemed, as Robbie Brady did, seemed quite downbeat about it all, that even though they got the victory, they knew that they had screwed up, that this was an opportunity to kick on, to end the campaign on a real high, rack up a couple of goals, and that they had blown that opportunity, and it's on themselves. But I think you're right. Like, it's okay to have mixed emotions on this, because results haven't been good enough yet. Performances have been getting better, but they need to get the two of them combined, and they need to stop having... we came away from Saturday night going, that was good, that was really good. We lost the bloody game. Came away from last night going, that was really good for long parts. How were we in a scenario heading into injury time where we weren't leading?
Yeah, okay. A couple of points here on that very point from our commenters, Super Ken 354 and John. All those pundits are all of a sudden worried about the performance and not the result. We weren't good in the second half, but they could have crumbled after that equaliser, but they got the winner, says Super Ken. John goes, all of the Kenny outers' main argument was that Ireland wasn't getting results, but now that we won, they'll point to the performance, which is the argument Kenny in supporters would use in other games. Damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Yeah, like the disappointment last night is that it's obviously a relegation playoff, and what screwed Ireland was the first day against Armenia. Likewise, what screwed Ireland in the last campaign was the defeat against Luxembourg. And if you look back in the last campaign, if Ireland had won that game against Luxembourg, they probably would have been right in the mix in that last match. And likewise, last night, it was an incredibly tight group, except for the fact that Ireland had lost against Armenia. And that sort of result is unacceptable, and that sort of result will kill them in the next qualifying campaign if they don't win their games against the lowest 2 ranked teams. You got to win those 4 games, guaranteed, win them easily, and then do what you've been doing against the better teams. So they can't afford any little slip-ups.
Just to play that out, if we'd actually beaten Armenia, we wouldn't have been in it last night because of the Scotland result. But maybe at 1-1 with the game against Scotland, that changes how you approach those last 10-15 minutes. I don't know if that alters the substitutions and the tone and the music around it, but it would have been interesting to see what the pressure in a positive sense might have done to the team. So look, I mean, the relegation thing, it was real. The mood was he will lose his job in one of the papers that I'm no doubt was around the team hotel. Lose tonight and he loses his job. That has to get to the players at some point. So I don't know, they won a relegation playoff. It's one of our best ever performances in this competition. I mean
Yes, positive.
There's never been a lower bar set than that.
If hypothetically in a different universe, if Armenia had gone on to score a third and win the game 3-2, like, are we talking hypothetically about Kenny's job being gone?
It's very, very difficult to...
That's the only definitive take. I feel like we're none the wiser a week later. Everybody feels the same as they did a week ago. But what's our consensus here? I was asking Nathan who stood out for you the last 2 games, and you listed loads of players, legitimately.
Yeah.
And we had 2 exciting games, and we won last night. But it feels like it's a bit of a morning today.
Maybe our bar is so high.
I think there's entrenched views on both sides. The problem for me is I'm not sure the players fully believe in it for all the way through the game, maybe 2/3 of it. And I think we have that final third to go yet. So I do think there's actually ceiling for him to improve a bit more. But the doubters are going to constantly remain if we're getting these results, unfortunately. I think the football is quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you made a good point here about, like, the players are aware. Robbie Brady will say he doesn't read the papers, but they are aware of the intense scrutiny that Stephen Kenny is under, and they're very young, inexperienced players who don't have to deal with anything like this sort of pressure generally at club level. And is that enabling them to play their best football? It's not going to change. They need to find a way. The pressure is always going to be high, and it's only going to get higher going into March. But they need to be able to cope with that. And I'd almost disagree with him. I think actually they believed in what he was saying last night was almost the problem, that he needed to just call a halt in 65 minutes and say, let's regroup, lads.
Right.
Let's get ourselves together structurally. Whereas they sort of just seem to lose all shape, all discipline. And you're right, this debate is going to go on. But look, the Manchester derby's on the weekend. Everyone will be back to the Premier League. And, as I said last week, it'll be the week of the game before it all sort of pops up again.
All right, 14 minutes past 8. Nathan, good stuff. Thanks a million.